have I done? Greg Jewett, get in here. Callan, get in here. Rick Graham, get in here. Good to see all of you. Thank you so much. Greg, of course, of a Reliever Recon. Callan and Rick of our very own In the Pen podcast. Who better to talk about relievers? Guys, take it away, and thank you so much for being a part of PitchCon.
All right, of course. So, of course, this morning I woke up and something was nesting right above my throat. So my voice is terrible, but I will grind it out for the next, 56 minutes now, as Nick alluded to. So in case you missed the introductions, we'll go around the panel really quick. Greg Jewett, I am obviously the owner of Reliever Recon. I also am the closer expert for The Athletic, and I do a weekly column in season for Baseball HQ, but it's about hitters and lineup things, not about that. That's my one break from relievers during the season. So it's always a welcome thing. So next up we have Callan, and I don't want to butcher your last name, Elslager.
Yep, you got it. You're one of the first people that actually got it first try. So I'm pretty impressed.
20 years as a phys ed teacher. You got to come up with those pretty quick. So you can follow him on the Twitter machine at Callan, CALLEN_ELSLAGER. Someday we're going to get him to play puns with the lager on the end of his name with beer, but that's not what we're here for.
I've always said if this fantasy baseball thing didn't work out, then that's where I'm going to go. Some sort of beer, make it L's Lager. It's golden. It's a good idea.
It is. They write themselves. So how much do you do for the relievers at Pitchers List, and where can people find your stuff daily, weekly?
Yeah, I'm the host of the In the Pen podcast with Rick and one of our other co-hosts, Jake Crumpler, who you'll see at some point this week. I don't remember what panel he's on, but yeah, we do. It's a weekly look into dive into the bullpens throughout the MLB, and I'm doing some written content. I take a little step back with some school stuff finishing up, but I'll be jumping back up during the season. I don't know exactly what yet, but mostly hosting this podcast and then some little writing on the side.
Nice. Yeah, I'm already getting near fried, but and then last but never least, we have Rick Graham, also on the Twitter machine at I am Rick Graham, and you can just basically copyright what's there below you with the I am in front of it. I know he also does bullpen stuff for Pitchers List, and obviously I'll be happy to appear with you guys as the season gets nearer on your great podcast. So Rick, tell everybody what you got coming around the bend here.
Yeah, so getting ready for the release of PL7, and then just getting their opening rankings done. Starting to this is the time of year, like just trying to get the closer rankings done, and then then the saves plus hold rankings are a whole other thing. But working on that, getting ready for it's coming up in a couple weeks. So excited though for baseball right around the corner.
You guys in rankings, I all the guys at Recon know that's my least favorite thing in all of this, is because I feel and already like The Athletic is doing a printed draft guide this year. I just got my copy in the mail today. I assume it'll be landing in stores soon. But even from the time where I sent in my relief pitcher preview, I think there was at least 4 rewrites, and I could probably do another one tomorrow if they really wanted it. So it's like rankings can go live on Monday, and then 2 guys land on the IL on Monday night, and then you're scrambling to redo them again. So it's as Aaron Pags at our site says, he said, Greg, people want fish tacos. They don't want to know how to fish. So I have to accede to that. But again, you guys do great work, and we'll get through a lot of this stuff here. So, as we're going through the strategy thing, I just wanted to throw out some numbers here that I published for Vlad Sedler in the FTN draft guide. So last year we had 222 relievers record a save. That's 24 more than 2021. So it's hard when we're coming off of 2020 with things resettling and all those things. Now, what I found interesting was there were 6 fewer relievers that got 5 or more saves. All right. Again, 6 more relievers that got 10 or more saves. And then 20 or more, it only dropped by 2. And then we actually went up by 1. So there were 10 that had 30 or more. So it's like, as much as some teams are all over the place with these bullpens, we still had the narrower focus at the top. So, I mean, it's still a top heavy category. What was the biggest lesson you learned last year? And we'll start with Rick on this one.
The biggest lesson, I mean, I don't know if this doesn't just apply, I guess, to last year, but the fact that, like, kind of like you mentioned, bullpens are just an ever-changing landscape right now, and that should reflect for, you know, how we're drafting relievers as well. So I was actually looking at our closer charts from the start of 2021, and yeah, how about this? I found out that there was the only closers that are still in the closer role with their respective teams are Edwin Diaz, Ryan Presley, Jordan Romano, and Daniel Bard. That's from the start of 2021. So, you know, guys are always moving, guys are always changing teams or changing roles. There's always, you know, there's a lot of turnover in this when we're trying to figure out closers.
How about you, Callum?
I think going off that, it's just be aggressive quickly. The burn and churn of relievers, it's real. I mean, we go through us all off season. We're always talking about who's your late sleeper for saves, who's the guy kind of the mid tier, who's going to be the leader on these fringe teams. And then a week in the season, it's changing. Some injury happens. Someone emerges out of nowhere. We had the Julian Merriweather emergence of a few years ago. We have these random guys that come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're thrust into saves conversation. And it's really a reminder of how aggressive you need to be on saves. Not even just drafting. You can still make your way through a draft with not being as aggressive as some people tend to go, but the burn and churn it's real. And you feel like you're behind even 3 weeks in the season, make the switch, make that switch, spend your fab early because you may lag behind and it's hard to catch up.
Yeah, I was fortunate last year to get Helsley in a couple of places before the, you know, in the NFBC, we call it the Sunday save tax. So if a guy gets a save on Sunday, all of a sudden you have to go back and alter all of your bids and fab for that evening. So it makes it difficult. I think the thing for me is last year I advocated drafting what I called an anchor, which was a guy I thought was going to give me 25 to 30 saves. And then after that, I'll figure it out with the draft room. So it wasn't like I was going to force taking like Hader or Hendricks last year, but I wanted somebody that I knew was at the least what I call the primary save share. I want somebody that's going to, hey, he's the team's guy, and I can rely on him, hopefully, barring a trade or injury or whatever. But at least I have somebody to set the tone, and then as it goes. And when you look at like the top 25s, when I went through the NFBC stuff, you know, the numbers were down. So, you know, we can quote the 80 percentile and the other things, but I'm pretty sure in the OCs, it was, I believe it was 72. The top 25 teams all averaged out together, 72 saves last year of all those teams. So, I mean, only one of them punted the category. And in the main event with the 15-team league, it dropped down to like 66. So it's like we have this number in our head. I think sometimes people are under the I don't know, misguided that they have to get like 80 saves to compete in the category. And I think that's wrong. You just want to get somebody to hopefully get you 30, and then you can figure out the rest. And as Callum obviously said, burn and churn is a big thing with them. So one thing that as we like to joke about is grinds my gears is sites insisting on calling somebody the closer. So like somebody gets a save. Oh, he's the new closer. There, as you both well know, there's teams like Seattle that, you know, even though Sewald got more saves than anybody last year, push comes to shove when the best part of the lineup was up, it was Andres Munoz. Or other teams are deploying these things. You know, we've seen the Rays do this for years and all these things. So, you know, Callum, how do you feel about when somebody's, it's almost like a race on Twitter. People want to be like, oh, this guy's going to be the closer, go pick him up. Whereas I'm more cautious on that.
Yeah, Rick and I always used to joked last year on the podcast. There's the weekly teams, like you said, Seattle, Philadelphia for a time. Every week we're having a discussion. Oh, this guy got the last save. Oh, never mind. This guy got a save now. So never mind. Let's take that back. So I think, like you said, it's easier for some people just to understand if this guy's the quote unquote closer. It's the guy who's the favorite for saves. But you're right. It is a tough label to put on somebody because it is so ever changing. So while we want to have someone to label just to be able to tell people this is who we like best, and it's easier to say they're a closer than they'll likely get saves, but you know, it's a tough label to put for almost at least half the league at this point right now.
Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, sorry, Rick. Do you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think as long as there's still like set closers for, you know, the majority of the league, it's still going to be a term that's unfortunately going to get used. And not that it's unfortunate, but it's just it's hard. It's like half the league has closers, half the league it's week to week. So it's we're probably not something that's going to go away anytime soon. But the game's changing, so we'll see. There's more high leverage. Teams moving to high leverage rules instead.
Yep, and I almost feel like we don't know what's going to happen in Kansas City, and I've already seen people anointing Aroldis Chapman the closer. And okay, yes, they might trade Barlow, and yes, you know what? We brought the new manager came from Tampa Bay, and you can already see it. They've targeted two Twins relievers that have stuff, maybe not to command, and they'll come in and try and hone those skills. So they're going to turn over the roster, it looks like, as we're looking at this. So I don't know that Chapman's insulated for saves, but I do think they're going to give him a chance early on just because he decided to go to Kansas City over San Diego. He took less money probably for the allure that he's going to get ninth inning opportunities. So again, I'm not going to say Chapman's the closer and Barlow could be traded tomorrow. But I think that's a situation like many that we're going to cover later that are under construction, I guess is the best way we can put that. All right. So Rick, in a draft, when are you targeting? And most people are playing 12 teams, so I'm not going to go NFBC specific here. So on a 12-teamer, are you kind of monitoring the room, or do you have like a tier, or you draw like a line saying, I don't want to get beyond this guy, I'm getting one of these so-called people?
Yeah, I think that kind of what you said before is having that one guy that you can kind of rely on. Ideally, that's, you have a list of probably five. It's probably this, at this point, 5 or 6 guys you can really kind of depend on. And then, yeah, if it's kind of, if I miss one of those 6, I'm not going to, or if just say you're in a league that really values and just, it goes save heavy real early in the draft, I'm not going to, take someone way overvalued just because the rest of the league's doing it. So I typically, I like to get that one anchor and then kind of see what things are looking like towards the end of the draft. But yeah, I'm not gonna force it necessarily. It depends on where the league's drafting.
Yeah, to go off that, I'm kind of same boat. I'm kind of my second, third tier of closers. I usually will not be the guy to spend up on the elite guys. You will be unlikely to find a Liam Hendricks or Josh Hader or any of those guys from last year on my rosters, unless it's a room like Rick said where relievers just aren't being drafted. Then all of a sudden one falls to you in the 4th, 5th round. It's like, okay, fine, I can take that plunge now. But most of the time I'm waiting to the second or third tier, get that guy who can get you consistent, is the lockdown quote unquote closer for their team, and then fill out the rest of my save situation as it goes. But I like to at least start with one stable guy and then build from there.
Yeah, that stuff makes sense. All right, I'll let either one of you can answer this. Do you know what reliever was the most rostered player of the teams that finished in the top 25 of the main event?
Oh, I'm gonna guess Class A.
Yeah, I'll go Edwin Diaz.
Kenley Jansen.
Oh,
no,
okay.
That speaks exactly what Callum was saying. Is as the rosters expand, you get 15 teams in a draft. Again, you don't necessarily have to go fishing at the top end. But we obviously will talk about them because that's what most people want to hear about. But that's just something that you have to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
I think a guy this year that's going to be in a very similar boat is Raisel Iglesias. Atlanta is one of the most stable save shares out there. And they gave Jansen rope last year. I mean, and they gave Smith rope in 2021, even though there was times that both relievers were in question of, are they going to be replaced? They stuck it out and they were productive in both of those years. So I'm not going to be targeting Jansen this year because I just don't like the pressure cooker in Boston. And I think the pitch clock might mess with them, but we don't want to give away stuff that's coming up down the pike. All right. So more important, and this can be anything, but obviously we're talking about closers, your draft or in-season management. Rick.
What's the most important?
Is it better to target the relievers that you want in the draft, or is it better to be diligent all season and you're just grabbing the guys as they're coming in?
I say with relievers, I think you don't want to go 0 for, I guess, 0 for in your draft. You want to at least come out of there with one guy you can kind of rely on for at least, the majority of the year. I know things change towards the second half and people fall off, but if you can get someone to carry you through, August, then I feel like, that you really win you can win your saves, column by just like Kalen kind of said earlier, churning and burning. There's always closers or closers for the week that you can pick up and run with. So I think for relievers, it really comes down to how you should probably want to have at least one, probably two relievers you pick up during the season that you can kind of consider as anchors and someone who can really help you in the saves department.
All right, so I'm going to toss a different one to Callan here. And I know you guys do stuff for solds, that's saves plus holds leagues. And I don't think one's better than the other. I think they both have their own nuances, but, solds leagues do reward the HLRs that rack up strikeouts and protect your ratios, whereas a standard league will not. So, Callan, in season, what's the best trait, or what do you use to identify like the next man up? So if you're doing solds, you can kind of see sometimes somebody moving up in the pecking order. How do you track that?
It's really just constant monitoring. I mean, I'd hate to plug our own stuff, but we have a daily article that comes out that outlines the bullpen usage, and it's even just I do it before we even record our podcast. I'll go through the daily articles and say, okay, these guys have been jumping in, because we can't watch 15 games a night. We're not going to know exactly. I'll look at somebody like, oh wait, this guy got that last save. So it really is just constant monitoring, even just checking the box score, putting your guy on your watch list. Like, oh, hey, this guy's come in high leverage situation. This guy's come in as the quote unquote setup man. The past 2 or 3 nights, he's someone I should monitor in case the inconsistent closer struggles or anything like that. And also follow the dollars. In terms of free agency, we've seen some teams who are spending decent money on their middle reliever, get someone to set a man. If they're spending the money and they don't start the year as the closer, something does happen. Teams tend to give the person who they paid the free agent money, try and boost their confidence, show them we paid you for a reason, we're going to get the save. So if they're not the immediate closer, but they spent money on them, keep that on the watch list. It's something I like to keep an eye on. That's why I was somewhat in on Ian Kennedy, and Rick knew my affinity for Ian Kennedy last year. I constantly kept saying, Lance is going to struggle. Ian Kennedy kept doing, I think, it was a weekly occurrence for me trying to get Ian Kennedy to be a thing because I had him in too many leagues, just as hoping on it. So it's just follow those trends. Just keep watching.
Anything to add, Rick, or is that pretty much what you're doing too? I mean, the whole reason I started the closer charts I did years ago was that thing. I was like, if I'm going to cover this, I got to track it day to day, and that's what kept me dialed in.
That's really this is the least. Other positions, starting pitchers, you can kind of monitor it weekly because the guys only get one start a week potentially, or, with bats, with hitters, you don't want to take one game and it's kind of a small sample size. But yeah, with relievers, it's really like a day-to-day thing. And just, being able to like pay attention and like Galen mentioned, like just, having some sort of resource to look at daily does help for, staying on top of the latest, trends and how bullpens usage is going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's crazy. So, all right, that's a pretty good, I think, layer of knowledge that we're sharing with everybody as far as the strategy end of it goes. So we'll get into some player stuff and more. And obviously we can talk about somebody beyond the player or players that I spit out, but as you're looking at the early NFBC 12 teams, and I use the data from January 1st on, so anything that's just this year, and it's very small. The Gladiator format really depressed a lot of the ADP that we normally see at this time of year. So I think there's only been 3, maybe 4 OCs since the beginning of the year. But there's a clear top 3 right now when you're looking at that ADP, and it's no surprise. Relievers are very reactionary. So we are like, oh, he was the guy last year, so I'm going to target him this year. So the first reliever taken is Edwin Diaz. I don't think that's any shock. He's the only reliever that had more than 100 strikeouts last year. So, he's at the top of the food chain playing on a good team. Emmanuel Clase, who led the league in saves, is number 2, even though he doesn't have the strikeout ceiling other guys might have. And then third in the ADP, and I I feel a smidge validated because I kept him fairly high in my rankings, even in the stuff that's coming out with the Athletic. Third in ADP is Josh Hader. So does any of that surprise you? And if you were choosing between those three, you're at the top of the third round and no one's taken a reliever yet, and you decide I'm just going to get my guy. Who would it be of these three and why?
I don't love taking any one of them, but if I had to pick, I think if I'm going with one of these three, I think Clase, which is, it's kind of weird, even though he only has 2 years of closer experience, he still feels like the less volatile one of the group. I just feel like, with his command and his stuff, that like we know what we're going to get from him. We know the usage. We know what Francona, how he plays with its bullpens and how he uses guys. So I feel like if I'm taking someone really early, it would be Clase or Diaz. But if it basically depends on which one goes first, I'll take the second one. It's a little surprising to see Hader that high, but I mean, it did seem like he righted the ship. He did it at the end of the year last year, and he always kind of has these weird August like meltdowns every year, it feels like. So this one was just a little bit longer, and took him a little bit longer to dip back on track. But I think we could see a big year from him. Yeah.
How about you, Kellen?
If I'm going to target one, I'm kind of like Rick. I usually won't draft any of them, but if I had to target one of them, it would be Hader, just simply because he's going the latest. If I get to the point in the draft where he is going, where currently based on that ADP is going best around pick 40, so mid 4th round or so in your 12-team league. So that's a price I'd be okay with taking my first closer. I'd rather take out of here, but if he's still sitting there, I'll let the Diaz Clase. Of course, if I get to that point in the draft in the 4th round and they're still available, I'll probably take the other. But my expectation is that one or two of them will be off the board. And if Hader falls to me, I'm fine with it. But I'd rather go to the other tier. So, but I'm just like Rick. I'm a bit surprised he is there because, like you said, closer's so reactionary, and he had such a poor stretch towards the last part of the season last year, and that seems to be what we remember most. So I would have thought some people would be fading him based off that, but.
Oh yeah,
they haven't brought any relievers to compete with him, so he'll be right back up there next year, I can assure you.
Well, and you can make the case for all of them. So Clase, among all qualified American League relievers, he obviously first in saves. He had a 0.73 WHIP. I mean, the guy's just been a ratio eraser, which is what the allure is. Again, if I'm taking a closer in the 3rd round, I think I just want a little bit higher strikeout ceiling, and that's just me being picky. But the only way I can do that is if I'm taking like pitchers there, and my first 2 pitchers have to be high strikeout guys. Like I can't take Clase and then ignore and then not take starters that can't give me 200 strikeouts in my first 2 picks when I'm getting that position. I mean, it's just about the construction. You got to be able to put all the pieces together. Diaz, we know we're getting the strikeouts, but we know a couple times last year when the Mets were playing to beat Atlanta, they used him in the 8th inning against the best part of the lineup from the Braves. So I don't know if that's going to show itself again. And, the panel before us was talking about the age of the Mets pitching staff. Same in the bullpen, they brought David Robertson in, and they brought back Adam Ottavino. I mean, they're not young. So, if anything happens to those guys, now you're interrupting that bridge to him, which could force him to make longer outings. And I'm happy that you brought that up about Hader. So we forget he converted his first 18 saves last year, 18 appearances, 18 saves. All right. And then the personal stuff started to surface. There was complications with his son's birth. He took a personal leave, and then he came back. And the struggles really didn't manifest themselves till July. There was talk about, his release point was off and whatever. And he just was horrible. His 27 to 12 KBB those 2 months, that's not Josh Hader. And then the last part of the season, he got back to himself. And in the postseason, he was throwing at his highest velocity of his career, which the panels before Sarah Langs put a tweet out about. So to me, and I was shocked. I did a mock for the Athletic, that publication coming out. And I think I took Hader as the 5th reliever with a bunch of other writers. And I was just shocked. I mean, that was back in November, but I was like, wow, it really, I was happy as pie to get him. I think it was the 4th or 5th round, but that was a 15-team draft. So I was just like, if Hader falls here, I'll be in on him all year, but that's not going to stay the same. So let's get to the next thing here. Over under for strikeouts. Raisel Iglesias, 79.5. I paid close attention to his projections, so this is right about where everybody's at. Callan, you go first.
Yeah, I look at the projections trying to cheat a little bit, and they're both at Steamers at 77, the bats at 80, ATC's at 77. So you really picked a good number. I'll take the under slightly just because his K percentage has been dropping over the past couple of years. He had his lowest K percentage since 2019 when he had 31.9. He hit 31.7 this past year. Still high end. I'm not going to doubt that, but we know how good the NL East has gotten with how good the Mets are and how good the Phillies lineup is getting. So I think he's going to slightly below that. He's still going to be great. He's going to be one of those closers that I'm targeting in that second to third tier, likely in my drafts. But just with the K percentage decreasing these past couple of years, I think he slightly goes below that number.
I'll be the contrarian. I'll go over. I think last year was his first year under 80 Ks, not counting 2020. And I think a full season in Atlanta with he's got Sean Murphy behind the plate. I know it's only one inning, but that's still the defense and the pitch framing could help a little bit there. I think he can get back to 80 plus Ks. He still posted a 17.6% swinging strike rate, and he had a career high 37.7% chase rate last year too. So there's still swing and miss stuff there. He's still able to miss bats. So I think as long as he's healthy, I could see him getting 80 plus Ks.
Yeah, I put a tweet out the other day, and Nick was actually he jumped in on it a little bit. But I noticed when Raisel got to Atlanta, he started using his changeup more. And as Nick pointed out, he usually does that against lefties. But then I went back through the splits, and it wasn't like he saw a ton of left-handed hitters. It looked like Atlanta asked him to throw the changeup more, and that actually increased his K percentage from that time when he joined Atlanta compared to when he was with the Angels. So, I think we all know that the Angels is not a very adept team as far as the analytics and things of that nature. So it totally crystallized. So I think if the changeup is going to be a larger part of his arsenal, then I'm gonna take the over on that one as well. All right, so let's see what's next on my little rundown here. Nine closers are being taken in the first 70 picks in the ADP, and it goes up to 11 in 85. Now, I love the face you're making there, Callan, because last year when I was talking about the price inflation on closers is going up. Now, again, the NFDBC is a different animal. These people are playing for this particular contest is for an overall, not just like your league with your friends and things of that nature, but the draft capital is actually going up as much as we thought it might. The top end is coming down a little, but the middle it's almost like if you miss out on the run, you get left in the dust. And it just depends on if anyone in your draft is trying to take two of these people or how they're doing their construction. But so in this scenario, we both let it drift. We're like, all right, I'm going to get my guy on my second tier. The guy before me took Raisel Iglesias. I pounded my fist on the table. I took somebody else. And then it got away from me. All of a sudden, I'm at pick 90, and I don't have a closer. So I'm going to let it drift a little bit because then the next person doesn't come in until after pick 100. So after pick 100, and that's probably going to end up being like the top of the fourth tier. If you were stuck and you had to take one of those guys, who are you going to take, Callan?
I'm a Yankees fan, so I'm going to let a little bias come out here. I'm going to take Clay Holmes. What I saw from him last year, for the most part, was good. Again, what we saw towards the end of last year is what sticks out. He was battling on injury, but when he got back into the postseason, the Yankees were using him as their closer, except for that random game in Cleveland where Clark Schmidt came in a high leverage situation. I'm not going to hold that against you, Aaron Boone, but what the heck were you doing? But we know the Yankees, of those guys, are going to be the best team. They have great relievers. They brought in Tommy Kahnle. Jonathan Loaizaga has been really good. Wandy Peralta got in for saves, but Aaron Boone likes to stick with the one guy. We finally got Aroldis Chapman out, and Clay Holmes was the guy last year. So if I'm missing out, the Yankees are going to get close to 100 wins again this year. I'll take the primary closer for a guy or a team who's going to get that many wins. So give me Clay Holmes. If I miss out on him, I think he can have the upside to be a 20 to 25 save guy in that pen.
I think if we're talking about if it's the same pick, I would lean Holmes out of this group. But I think he's currently going about 25 picks earlier than David Bednar, and I think given their ADPs, I would prefer Bednar, a round or two later. He actually may be the most trustworthy of this group. After having, he has back-to-back seasons with both his K rate and CSW percentage above 32.5%. ERA has been under 3. Not going to kill you if ratio is going to get you strikeouts. There's certainly there's some risk with Holmes, as with that big chunk of time he struggled last year, and Diaz is a bit inexperienced. Daniel Bard's going to be 38 years old. Leclerc's had only 49.2 innings over the last 3 years. So I think in this kind of range, it's Bednar for me. And I think I saw somewhere today the Pirates somewhere are projected to win 83 games next year, which is
that was Zach Laxman talking about steam.
Yeah.
It's because he went through the amount of pitcher wins, and he's
the
Pirates are not winning even. And it hurts their win total because they're playing the NL Central less. So the balanced schedule is going to even put a bigger pot. Although they played great against the Dodgers last year, I just can't explain that one. But two things here. With no concern about now. I did share some research I did with Rob Beertonville of The Athletic, because the first 26, I think, appearances for Bednar before he did those, I think there was 2 back-to-back outings where he went 2 innings right before he went down with a back injury. Mm-hmm. And then after that time, his stuff just fell off. They can't use him like that. So that means you're putting a lot of faith in Robert Stevenson taking a step forward and then being able to cobble enough people together to get to Bednar in the 9th. I think that's the season Daniel Bard put together last year. That's just the unicorn. I mean, it fell into a lot of people's laps. And again, at Recon and spring training, I watched the game and I was like, you know what, this is Bard's job. And I got lucky that it happened. I never foresaw 34 saves by any means, but he was a difference maker if you got him late or early in Fab. Push comes to shove, I would lean Holmes in this exercise just because of the team concept. I'd rather have the primary save share on the Yankees than a really good reliever on the Pirates. And it's nothing against Bednar. I love the guy. He's a bulldog, and I love his personality. And the interview he had when he swore on live TV after that Dodgers game was fantastic. I mean, he's just fun. Plays the renegade coming out. The whole Pittsburgh connection. It's fantastic. I just can't see it. Before we go to the next thing, just off topic here, how do you guys feel about Jose Leclerc? Because he's like an enigma to me. Like, there's that 2018 season, but I think people are like, yeah, he's gonna it was like when we all kept chasing that 1 year from Jason Hayward. There's that one outlier season. Mm-hmm. It's like he's gonna do it again, and he doesn't do it again. I mean, does he have enough command? I think he has the stuff, but does he have the command to keep the whip at a tolerable rate? I mean, he's going at pick 170, so it seems like it's easy money, but I can't wrap my head around him yet.
I'm gonna let Rick take that one. He's kind of wax poetic about him at times on our pod, so I'm gonna let him.
He's got electric stuff at times, but other times he's like he doesn's know where the plate is.
The Leclerc's one of the guys I first fell in love with when I started doing reliever stuff. That was his stuff is nasty. He put in the metrics back it up too, but it comes down to command with him, and he gets behind in too many counts. But I think last year, he struggled originally coming back. It had been a long layoff from Tommy John.
Yep.
Then he really August forward, he did turn things around, and I still wasn't sure because he had a team option this year. I wasn't sure if Texas was going to pick it up or not, or what.
He waited until the last day.
Yeah, I was
the last minute. They're like, okay, we'll keep you.
Yeah, I still don't know. So,
and I've said this on another show, but I was like, why did they didn't throw him in September? They used Matt Moore for 2 save situations. I mean, was he shut down? I mean, there was never a team announcement saying, all right, his year's done. But it just seems strange to me that they used Moore, and they were using Moore against righties. It wasn't like he was coming in for a 2 out of 3 hitters were lefty situation, because I was watching those games with interest. I'm like, what's I don't know. That makes a mess. And then they did bring in Bochy, so he's usually pretty stable.
Yeah.
But they also just brought in Reyes Maranta, who we don't know what his velocity is going to be or how effective. He's got the same he has less stuff and more command issues, so I don't really think that's a threat. But my goodness, I don't know. With all the money they spent on starting pitching, I was shocked that they didn't go out and get an established ninth inning guy. It just made no sense with how they're trying to do things. If I'm in a win now mode, I don't know how they didn't get a better. And apparently they're out of the market on Matt Morris. They're saying he's getting too expensive. So it's like,
what a world we're in there, where Matt Moore is turning into being too expensive.
If you have a son, teach him how to throw left-handed. That's the long and short of that story. All right, this one's a tough one, and I think this one is intriguing, just because of the way both teams run their bullpens. But these guys have pretty high draft capital. More saves this year, Yohan Duran or Andres Munoz? Callen.
I will get back and forth on this one. I'm going to go with Duran just because it's similar team context. He's mainly competing with Jorge Lopez for saves, and Jorge Lopez was the big guy they acquired at the trade deadline last year, and kind of was competing for closer, but he struggled when he got to Minnesota. So while he may still be the favorite, I think that's his main competition. Seattle, Munoz still has to compete with Diego Castillo. Matt Brash is going to emerge out of that pen. Paul Sewald, who had a great panel earlier today on PitchCon. If you didn't catch it, definitely worth tuning into. There's, to me, just a lot more competition in that Seattle bullpen than there is with Minnesota. And we're still in January. You never know if something else happens, but I'm willing to take the shot on, while the Mariners are going to be the better team for team context, I think there's less competition for saves for Duran. So I'm more willing to take the shot and think he emerges more. I'm not fully bought in on the half of a good season from Jorge Lopez. I think Duran could take the job and go ahead of it, while Munoz has electric stuff and is beloved in the community. He's competing with a few more people than I would like.
Yeah, I agree. Pretty much the same reasons. I think I mean these are two of my favorite relievers this year, and for save and hold leagues, they're top,
yeah. If you're in the Souls leagues, these guys are gold. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I honestly there could be an argument, I think, for Munoz being the top most talented reliever right now in baseball. But yeah, Duran's path is just a little bit, he doesn't have to deal with Paul Sewald. He has to deal with Jorge Lopez, who really struggled when he got to Minnesota last year. So, but it's not to say Duran. I mean, Duran still is, I think, top 10 amongst relievers last year in swinging strike rate, no swing, ground ball percentage, fourth in xFIP. So yeah, he's still a monster himself. And if he really does get all the save or the bulk of the saves there, he's going to be worth wherever he gets drafted in your league.
Yeah, this is another one where, and I'm happy we're having this conversation, because I think people are doing this like in real time, but with 1 minute on the clock in draft rooms, and you're like, okay, what do I want to make the splash upside play? Do I want to just hope he gets some falls into saves, and he's going to give me good strikeouts and ratios? So here's the head-to-head here. Yohan Duran he was scoreless in 23 of his last 26 appearances during his rookie year. He had a 0.94 ERA with a 1.045 whip in those 28.2 innings, 3 saves, 8 holds, and a 41-9 K to BB. Here's the thing and I'll get to that in a second. So Munoz, once they took the training wheels off, I mean, he was coming off injuries. And again, that's why maybe Leclerc might be better this year, because he's a year removed from his Tommy John surgery. Once Seattle let Munoz go, from June 13th forward, he was scoreless in 38 of 42 appearances. He had 3 saves, 18 holds, 69-9 K to BB, and a 0.661 whip in those 42.1 innings. The only reliever to have more outings with 3 strikeouts was Edwin Diaz. So, I mean, if it's strikeouts and stuff, and if you were at First Pitch Arizona, that Munoz had to take out a call of protection. He's got to keep Doug Dennis a certain amount of space away, because Doug just stalks him and waxes poetic about Andres. But if push came to shove, I'll take Munoz just because he's going a little later, and I'm just going to hope that he gets me 10 saves. So if I have my anchor to get me 30, I got Raisel Iglesias, then I can take Andres Munoz. It gives me the flexibility in draft to take a shot on someone like him. If I'm taking Munoz as my first reliever and it's not a Souls league, then I'm in a little bit more of a riskier boat, if that makes sense. Again, I do like both of these guys. They were in early articles at Recon. Well, not not Duran, but Munoz was in my first like post last year in a column I call Fortune 500, where I was like, guys, past pick 500, you can try and target for 5 saves. And then once Duran showed himself in spring training and it was going to be, he's a reliever, then he was in one of my first athletic posts for that same reason. I was just like, man, this guy with that splitter he has, he's sexy, but not quite as sexy as Munoz. So I'll side with that one. All right, let's have a little fun here. So, and people don't want to hear us talking about the top end of the food chain all the time. Using that same ADP, I asked you guys to pick a favorite reliever, going at pick 250 or later. So this is for those who like to punt the saves, or you're looking for that guy in the late rounds that you're going to grab as your third reliever for upside. And if he hits, then you're doing well and you're saving that fab money in season. So I think I let Callan go first last time. So Rick, who was your guy past pick 250 using that NFBC ADP I sent you guys?
Right now I'd go with Trevor May. Only guy. He's the only guy that's getting paid in that Oakland bullpen, and he should open up as the favorite for saves there. And this, he battled some injuries last year, but he still possesses. I know most relievers, they have 2 pitches, but he's one of those rare guys, kind of like Iglesias, where he features 3 pitches that are plus. So, and despite the A's being in that like non-competitive tier, they still managed 59 save opportunities last year, which was 21st in baseball. So I know they had 3 relievers have a ton of holds last year. So they still, there's opportunities there just because they're a bad team. Don't just forget about the closers on the bad teams, especially later in drafts.
How about you, Callan?
I'm going to go with Carlos Estevez with the Angels. A lot of people have waxed poetic about how good the Angels offseason has been. They've actually been smart, which is rare for the Angels in terms of what they're doing in the offseason. They've created a lot of depth. They're increasing that rotation. The bullpen is still one of those bullpen by committees that we've kind of, steer clear of, but he's the one they spent money on. I know it's not big money, but they went out and sought after him. Fastball velocity was in the 95th percentile in all baseball last year. All the other StatCast numbers don't jump off the page, but if you can get the top saves guy in a team that we expect to be up and coming in terms of competing for a playoff spot, competing for a wild card spot, maybe could move up to the second best team in the West. That's a bit of a stretch, but it's possible. So if he emerges as the closer on the Angels, I think there's plenty of save opportunities to go there. And we know that, Phil Nevin kind of has an old schooler mentality where he probably will want to stick with one closer down the road. So I could see him emerging and being someone you like late. And at pick 301 currently on the NFBC, I'm all in on that.
Man, attaboy, you took my guy, Callan, but it's okay. I when I did his player profile on Reliever Recon, I went through and sorted out all of his home and road data from the last 2 years. So in cores versus out of cores. So since 2021 in home games, he had a 48 to 30 K to BB, 1.39 WHIP, and a 7 K minus BB. On the road, in 62 games, he had a 66 to 14 K to BB. Okay, that's a pretty massive leap forward, especially
that sounds better.
The walk rate just went off a cliff. All right, he had a 1.28 WHIP, which I would like to go down, but it was much better last year. His command improved last season, but even with that, he still had a 21.1 K minus BB percentage in road games since 2021. Okay, so I know Estevez kind of collapsed when he was made the closer when Bard struggled in 2021, but he's better than we think. And the key to me is his slider swinging strike percentage on the road last year, 22.9%. That's pretty good. So if he can throw strikes and use that slider well at home, I think that could work out very well for him. So, and since you took my pick, I will give one other, and this one's way off the road. This can be the last pick in your draft, but I got burned by Hunter Harvey a couple of years ago, but I think, and he worked all off season with his dad, and he's already pitched with the pitch clock. Kyle Finnegan is one of the slowest relievers when you go through those numbers. And he's a max effort guy. So the pitch clock, if his pitch, his trajectory went up last year because he was throwing harder. If he loses a little bit of velocity because he can't have that extra 5 seconds in between every pitch, again, I'm speculating, but I think on a lot of my teams, Hunter Harvey is going to be my last choice in a 30-round draft. So that's a recon special. We'll put that one out there. But and it's funny. It's always those guys that we give up on, then they come back, like the Phoenix from the Ashes. Like, oh my God, I totally forgot about Hunter Harvey, but all of a sudden he's effective again.
Yeah.
Okay, so last year was closer by calculation from the new manager Marmol in St. Louis, even though it started that way, and then Helsley kind of took over. This year, Rob Thompson is calling the Phillies a floating closer. So I'm probably going to stay away from this bullpen. But if push came to shove, who's going to lead the team in saves? Rick?
I think right now I have Craig Kimbrell, but I think it's just because of a history, if nothing else. I don't feel
with Dombrowski.
Yeah, I don't feel great about it. I mean, but they certainly, I'm sure I'll change my mind one or two times before the season starts. But yeah, he wasn't great last year. The skills are definitely diminishing. He is the guy they're paying $10 million a year to. So I think he gets the first. If anyone gets like the chance to run away with this, I think he gets the first chance. And I could see him leading the team in saves up until like July, and then kind of fading. Or I don't think it's gonna. I might not have a happy ending, but I think Kimbrell has a chance to get you some saves in the first half of the year.
How about you, Callan?
I'll agree. They're paying Craig Kimbrell $10 million. He has as better control compared to the wildness of Gregory Soto at times, the wildness of Jose Alvarado. We know teams are hesitant to go with lefty closers for whatever the reason is. For basically what Rick said, for history of Kimbrell and the money they're paying him, I think he leads, but it's going to be a situation like you I'm probably steering clear of unless I'm in a Solds league. If I'm in a Solds league, yeah, get a reliever in this pen. The Phillies are going to be really good.
Yeah, if I'm in a Souls league, I want the guy that has the best K to BB, so I'd be getting Sir Anthony. But yeah, I totally and when I did I've done 2 of them already. I tried to like predict at least save totals from the top part of the leverage ladders on each team. And I think I had Kimbrell at like 16, Sir Anthony at 11, and I put the 2 lefties at like 7 each, just because it's really going to boil down to what part of the lineup's coming up and who can start hot. For fun though, go look at the numbers. I forgot who put the tweet out, but they had Kimbrell's numbers last year facing Arizona, and then take his outings against Arizona away. All of a sudden his ERA and WHIP become much more palatable. So I don't know if he was tipping pitches against the Diamondbacks and they were onto something, but he was horrible against Arizona and decent against everybody else, surprisingly. So again, I don't want any part of that, but we'll see where it goes. So we got a bunch of these here. I have a favorite, but Tampa Bay, Callan.
Fairbanks. He was so dominant last year when he came back. I think he's going to be. I never like to draft a Tampa Bay Ray closer. This might be your do it. I'm in love with everything I saw from Fairbanks last year. He's probably going to be one of the second closers I grab that I'm going to feel more confident in. So I'm all in on him.
Rick?
I think Fairbanks too, as long as he's healthy. And it's kind of, it's funny thinking that they have maybe one of the best duos in the back end with Fairbanks and Adam. And, 2 years ago they had Nick Anderson and Diego Castillo, who we could have said the same thing about. And now it's, Fairbanks and Adam. But yeah, as long as Fairbanks is healthy, he's the guy.
All right. Hey, in that mock draft I was telling you about, the second reliever I took was Pete Fairbanks, and it was past pick 200. And I was like, thank you guys. Somebody had taken Greg Soto ahead of him, and I was like, again, this was before Soto got traded, but I wanted nothing to do with that roller coaster on your ratios. It just wasn't something that was appealing to me. All right, next one. We already covered the Angels, so I'm not going to beat that one down. This one's a little tougher. Arizona, because this sounds like a spring competition, and they still are talking about bringing another person or two in. Rick, you got any educated guess on Arizona?
This is probably the one team I'm definitely staying away from, no matter what. I'm rooting for Kevin Ginkel. I think as far as upside goes, he definitely is. I'd rather take a shot on him than Mark Melancon at this point. But yeah, it's
anybody but Melancon.
Yeah, anybody but Melancon, pretty much.
And I'm just seeing a Twitch comment now that they just signed Jerry's Familia. So there we go.
Oh,
There's another name to throw in this mix.
Okay,
Okay.
well, that's not quite the veteran I was thinking. I don't see that as much of a threat to anybody. Callan, you got any guess there? You're going to go with Ginkle.
You know what? I'm going to go off the beaten path. I'm going to go Miguel Castro. He's someone who I kind of hyped up as a late
Callan and I are
guy.
on the same page here. All right.
We talked about it in the pen. He's all his mix talks about how great his stuff in is just getting control. Now you put him in Arizona with Brett Schramm, who's widely considered one of the best pitching coaches in baseball. I'm going to take that shot. I think, like you said, of Hunter Harvey, who's a great late round pick, Miguel Castro might be the guy I take at pick 450, my last pick of a draft, that I try and get in a lot of leagues and hit on this Arizona bullpen. And just like Ian Kennedy, get burnt.
Well, he needs to have a good spring. But I made when I did a write up in my Fortune 500 on Castro, I made that same package together with Strom. Everyone forgets Ryan Presley wasn't Ryan Presley until he got to Houston. He started to turn the corner, but once he got with Strom, his K minus BB just skyrocketed, and he attacked hitters with a better plan. I think that changeup could be a weapon for Castro out there, even with their humidor and the other stuff. But that's an intriguing pick. This one's unfortunate, and again, I know we're on the ALS thing here for Sarah Langs, and she's a pillar of the baseball community, but another pillar, and Liam Hendricks, he states what's on his mind, and he stands up for people that don't always have a voice, and I respect him to the utmost. So I'm keeping him and his family in my prayers as he battles non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But that leads us to the inevitable question here. So Callan, are you team Graveman or are you team Reynaldo?
I'm team Graveman for now. I want to see Ronaldo. I like what I saw, but they pay same thing. They paid Graveman the money last off season. So I think he goes in as the favorite, and he'll ultimately end up with more saves. But I'm intrigued with what I saw from Ronaldo, but I'll stick with the guy they spent money on and think Graveman starts the year and pitches well enough to keep the job.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I also think he had a bad year, but Joe Kelly's probably not someone to rule out just yet. He was one of the more unlucky pitchers in baseball last year, so we'll see.
I know I have a hard time. I know I shouldn't dismiss him, but I'm actually going against the grain. I'm going team Reynaldo. It might not be a deciding a big difference, which makes this something that okay, if you want to take a late round stab as your third reliever, okay. And again, that speaks to the strategy thing. You have to have a plan. So know who those late round targets are, because you have to work from the back to the front, as Jeff Zimmerman keeps trying to tell us, and a lot of us keep ignoring them, and we always talk about the guys in the beginning. Okay, on the other side of town, the Cubs. This one, and at least the White Sox have a couple of choices. I feel like the Cubs job could be anybody's. Rick?
I still think it's Brandon Hughes, but I'm curious. I want to see Manuel Rodriguez. I want to see him. The strikeout numbers were down last year, but I love kind of what he had, his stuff. So I think there's more to unlock there with him. But I like Hughes too. I think Hughes is just the lefty factor sometimes throws you off, but he's really good.
I'll stick with Hughes. Another one I wouldn't be surprised if Alzolay finds his way into this conversation based on his former prospect pedigree. But like Rick, I'm kind of intrigued what I saw from Hughes last year and think he takes it. But like I talked about earlier, the fact that he's a lefty concerns me slightly because they probably would want him as a fireman role in some situations. So I could see it being a 50-50 split, but I think he slightly emerges above everyone else.
Yeah, what worries me about Hughes is the Cubs are linked with Matt Moore and Andrew Chafin. So if that happens, he would probably take that leverage role, and it would probably push Hughes down the ladder a little bit. This could be bold, but if Alzolay is working 1-inning outings in spring training, he could be this year's Helsley. I'm just gonna say that he's in 1-inning burst with his stuff. He could be very, very good. I don't know if they will do that. And Cody Hewer will be coming back around June or July, but he's coming back from TJS. So if Alzolay establishes himself by then, they can just use Hewer in a setup role and they don't have to worry about it. To me, he's the only one in this bullpen that could run away with it if given the chance. I know people are tantalized by Manny Rodriguez, but I don't know. They've been trying to fix his command issues for a long time. We'll see what happens. All right. We already covered Oakland. this is another team where I'm either avoiding or have no real good feel for. But Callan, where are you going to go if you're taking a Marlin? Are you?
Do I have to?
Well, that's
yeah. It's
that's why I'm like. That's why I preface it with like.
No, I got burnt last.
I won't be fishing here.
Yeah, I got burnt last year of Anthony Bender, so I'm a bit hurt by that one. But I guess I would say Dylan Floro, just for that's who they've kind of gone to. But I think, like you said, this one's just a void. I don't want to take any chances on this one, but it probably would be Floro.
Yeah, I don't love Floro either, or this bullpen, but I'll say Tanner Scott just because, third time's a charm. They tried to get him to stick in the closer role a few times, and I'm thinking, maybe he can get his command. If he could just get that walk rate down to like under 10%, I think he'd be all right.
All right, I know Nick's going to be coming in here in a second here, but I alluded to it earlier. Rick, do you have any concerns about the pitch clock with guys like Kenley and veterans that aren't used to, they haven't come up in the minors dealing with this ever? I mean, spring training might be a little rough for some of these guys.
Yeah,
am I overthinking this?
I think definitely for like the Jansons and Chapmans, the guys who've been, they have this, that routine that they in their wind up, that I think it's going to take some time to get used to. And, is it going to just be spring training and then they'll be fine? That kind of remains to be seen. But I think you'll see some adjustment periods from those veterans like that.
Yeah, I think it'd be somewhat of a concern. It's more of a tiebreaker for me. If I'm stuck between Kenley Jansen and a younger reliever, maybe I go with the younger one who's had a bit more experience, or it might be a tiebreaker, but I don't think I'm going to put too much weight on it for now. But I'll be evaluating quick. If I see any sort of a adjustment early in the season, then I might try and jump ship from Kenley or one of those guys as quick as possible.
Yeah, it's not Jansen slander, but if I'm deciding between him and Felix Bautista, I'm taking Bautista every time. Yeah. So I mean, that's just not to mention I love his walk-in song, and not just because I'm trying to kiss up to Alex, but that's a pretty cool scene when he comes in with the whistle, with the Omar's whistle. So I mean, that's a cool environment. I wish the Orioles had been a little bit more aggressive, but again, they're playing the long game for next year. I think we covered everything. I'm a little surprised, but this is fantastic. You guys, I appreciate you joining me on this panel and everything that you do. So again, go around, tell everybody where you are on the Twitter and where they can find you. And then we'll lock this up and hand it off to Nick.
Yeah, you can find me at I am Rick Graham on Twitter, and my stuff on Pitcher List through saves and holds rankings, closer rankings, holds rankings, and me and Callan, co-host the In the Pen podcast as well.
Yeah, you can find me at Callan_Usliger. Take my name, put an underscore it. You're good. But you can find me hosting that same podcast with Rick and Jake Crumpler, who will be again on some panel later in the week.
I think he's on this one coming up right now. Maybe, I'm not positive though.
Maybe. Let's see. We'll find out. But and you can find some.
Greg Jewett at GJEWETT9 on the old Twitter machine. Again, Reliever Recon. We are firing out content every day. I've already posted 13 reliever player profiles. I've had 2 different save projection articles come out. I do a ranking at the beginning of every month, and then Aaron Pags is doing a weekly ranking because he knows it drives me to drink. So I'm happy that my throat let me get through this whole segment. And again, I thank Nick, who I've gotten to know not only on the Twitter stuff, but from talking to him out at First Pitch, and then he had me on his great podcast talking about coaching and life and all those wonderful things. And this is a great thing. So don't forget to donate for the ALS and help great people like Sarah Langs make this something that's someday hopefully a memory, not something that families are having to deal with.
Yeah.
Wonderful job, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Greg, it's been wonderful getting to know you better, of course. And Rick and Callan, I know you guys so well. Rick, I've known you since 2014 or something. I don't know why you're not wearing the Brandeis shirt right now. Honestly, get out of here. No, really, guys, thank you so much for this stuff. I have one question. Okay, I am gonna have the second pick of this draft. When should I get my first starter, and who is it? Or sorry, my first reliever, and who is it? I'm doing a
12 or
mock draft right
15.
now. 12 teamers straight through, normal standard stuff. Who is the guy I need to get from the number 2 spot?
I think we're all kind of in agreement. Rysel Iglesias, I don't know, 8th
Okay.
round, something like that. Yeah, wait for him.
Yeah,
All
I mean, just you let the room come to you, but
Yeah,
you just have that. There's a nice soft landing spot in the middle tiers where like Rysel to Felix Bautista go, and people are really letting Ryan Helsley drift. If you're confident he's going to be the primary save share, I mean,
Well, no, are you
Helsley's
confident?
going after all of them.
Are you confident? It doesn't matter what I think, Greg.
Helsley's very good as long as that finger's okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank
No,
you guys
I
so much
think
for being
those
a
are
part
3
of this.
solid targets.
I appreciate you guys all calling each other up and making sure that the room wall is all linked up for this panel too. So thank you guys a ton. No, really, it was a great time having you here. Fantastic panel.
Thank you, Rick.
We'll
Thank
talk
you, Callan.
soon.
Great